Hey, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are. Today is another episode of Finance Friday. Today is going to be a unique episode where we're actually going to discuss something that I've been speaking with briefly, just to friends and family mostly, and to people who I discuss finance with. And it's about the looming recession and how we basically can tell when a recession is coming. And a lot of people probably assume that I threw the recession word out there because of the Trump and the trade war and tariffs and the economy. In reality, it's way more mathematical than that, and it actually has to do with the yield curve. Once the yield curve of the Treasury bonds inverts, that's when you can basically see when there's a recession. And I know you guys are yield bonds and Treasury bonds and yields and curves. What are you talking about, Dre? And I'm going to explain to you guys. Okay, let's go. All right, so now the yield curve for Treasury bonds is basically the rate at which the government, when they want to loan out money to people or to companies, the longer the term of the bond. If it's a 10-year bond, it's usually more expensive. If it's a 5-year bond, it's usually expensive. But the closer the date that the bond matures is, the more inexpensive it is to take out that bond. Now, when that flip-flops and when it's more expensive to take out a short-term bond versus a longer-term bond, that's when you know that there's a looming recession, because it means people don't have faith in the upcoming years, the years that's close to them, but they have more faith for the time frame down the line that this bond will be more profitable. So let me show you guys. This is actually what the normal yield curve would look like. And I'm going to show you guys an inverted yield curve. See, it's basically technically the opposite, where the closer it gets to bond maturity, the closer the date is to bond maturity, the more expensive the yield is, or the more expensive it is to take out the loan, when in reality it's supposed to be the opposite way. The longer the term, the loan is supposed to be, the higher the yield, or the higher the percentage of interest. And we're going to actually show you guys, because back in 2008, I believe, this happened, where the yield curve inversed, and then once that happened, basically it just trickled down into a recession where the government basically had to lower the yield to basically 0% or under 1%, so that people can basically be incentivized to take out money from the government again. So I'll give you guys give me 1 second. All right, and now as we can see that the yield curve inverted in March of this year, March of 2019. And as you can see, it's definitely more expensive for under a year than it is for the 2-year, 3-year, and 5-year bond. So the longer the term is, the 30-year should never be equal to the 2-month or 3-month or 6-month. And I have more evidence. Let me see. And this is the U.S. Department of Treasury, and with this you can see basically the date, the yield curve rates for every day, and they alter every day. But as you can see, let's say for even the latest date, which would be the 16th, 9/16th, as you can see, the 1 month, the 2 month, the 3 month, they're all higher than the 5-year, the 10-year, and even the 7 years. So you can see only the 20-year and the 30-year are higher than those, and that's not supposed to happen. And the trick to knowing when a recession is technically upon us is knowing when the yield curve inverts. And more so, they like to go specifically with the 2-year versus the 10-year, okay? And as of yet, the 2-year is still under the 10-year, but once these prices invert, that's when we're in a full-on recession, when it's more expensive to basically received debt for 2 years than it is versus 10 years, that's when you know that we're under a looming recession. And that's the mathematical form to basically predicting when we're going to be going to an oncoming recession. It's knowing that once the yield curve for the Treasury bonds invert, which means that it's more expensive to borrow money in the short term from the government versus the long term from the government, that's when you know that we're in a looming recession, okay? And I have a little bit more facts. I want to show you guys some stuff from our previous recession, which was 2008. And as you can see, actually as of December 3rd, 2018 was when the Treasury yield curve inverted for the first time since the recession. And that means that the prices weren't going in the normal rate. The 5-year became more inexpensive than the 3-year, as you can see, and that's when it began inverting. And basically, let's go, we can see March 22nd, and that's when it totally inverted, where the 10-year is lower than the 3-month, and that was March 22nd. And as of August 12th, we're actually the 3-month was much higher than the 10-year, and we see the 2-year is close to the 10-year, but the 3-month is 2%, and the 10-year is at 1.65%. That's an obvious inversion of the rate, and an obvious sign of a looming or an oncoming recession. And if you take a look, the Treasury yield curve inverted before the recessions of 2001, 1991, and 1981, and it also predicted the 2008 financial crisis 2 years earlier. And the inversion had happened on the 22nd of 2005, and since the Fed worried that this was gonna basically be the sign of a looming recession, what they did was basically lower the interest rates. And once everything crashed, they made it so that people are barely paying anything to take out loans, because they assumed that if the yields were low, this would provide enough liquidity for the markets. But in reality, it was wrong, and the curve stayed inverted until June. I mean, no. What did they say? It inverted it until June 27th, 2007. I'm sorry. And the Fed just continued to lower the interest rate manually until it reached zero by the end of 2008. And then that's when the yield curve was no longer inverted, but it was too late. So I'm not going to be the bearer of bad news saying that we're going to actually, this is a predecessor to a real recession. But this is the sign that we are looming towards that zone. It's up to basically the Fed to basically either lower interest rates or inflate money. It's either one, because that's how they basically balance the economy. So either they're going to inflate us or they're going to lower the interest rate, and we're totally unsure as of now what exactly the Fed plans on doing. If you want to know more about the incoming recession, I would pay very close attention to the Federal Reserve and how they're basically planning to tackle the inversion of these Treasury yield curves. So want to thank you guys for tuning in. I know this was kind of a complex episode of Finance Friday, but it's for you guys basically to understand why, when I discuss a recession, or why I discuss an ongoing recession or oncoming recession, and when the media also discusses a recession, where it comes from in the mathematical term. We're not referring to Trump, we're not referring to the trade war, we're not referring to stores closing, we're referring to mathematics in regards to the yield curve. And usually when the yield curve inverts and it becomes more expensive to take out money in the long term versus the short term, that's when we know that we're going into a ongoing recession. So again, tune in to Finance Friday next week, and like and subscribe our page, please, and also access us www.riflcorp.com. Let us know what you think. Thank you guys.